Hi, thanks for tuning in to Armor of God. As always, let me start the video by saying thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us, and hopefully you'll learn a lot from what we've put together here for you. Well, there are a few things that I'd like to share with all of you here that you might find useful for your own spiritual protection. And so to kick this off, I'd like to share something from Father Chad Ripperger, which I like very much, and it's this. Humility is one of the most powerful things to protect yourself.
What happens when you go to confession? You have to own up to your failings. So it humbles us. Now, humility is one of the most powerful things to protect yourself. The more humble you are, the less the demons can influence you. In fact, one time a demon was talking about Our Lady, and she said her power is in her humility. The more humble you are, the more powerful you become in relationship. In fact, humility is a strength. Why? Because of the fact that A, it's a virtue, and all virtue gives you self-possession, self-control, but it gives you clarity of mind. It gives you a control over yourself that none of these other things do, and that's why the demons will avoid the humble, because they recognize they're more likely to be defeated. Also, God is more likely to protect someone who's humble. If you're really proud and arrogant, God will let you take a beating now and then to get you, humbled a little bit, to bring you down. So this is why humility is so key and so important. So it's the sacrament of humility. So regular confession. In fact, in my own personal experience, sometimes the confession is more powerful in liberating somebody than actual solemn exorcism. Sometimes people will actually have an extraordinary diabolic influence, but it's on a very low level. And they'll just go to confession. And the priest gives them, and they confess the sin. And as they confess the sin, and then that removes, as St. Ignatius says, he says, once the sin is aired out, once the thing that the demons are influencing you over is aired out, they lose power over that. And then once you're restored to grace, you're protected. So that actually confessing the sins and getting absolution breaks their control over you to some degree. And in some cases, it can actually break extraordinary diabolic influence as long as if it's on a low level, right? So confession is very important. Obviously, receiving the Eucharist, they can't stand it, right? And this is one of the reasons why it's, obviously because it's God. And it also strengthens us and gives us an increase in grace, which again gives us more protection. It fortifies us, etc. Receiving all the sacraments is very important. So you want to lead a normal sacramental life. If you're committing venial sin, you want to get to confession at least once a month. I don't want to hear this nonsense that you're hearing from other priests who say things like, oh, well, you're only committing venial sin. You just go to communion and that'll suffice. Okay. It's true that the church does teaches that receiving communion can wipe away venial sin, but you don't know if they have, because you don't know the degree of devoutness with which you have received communion. You don't have certitude, so that's why you have to keep going to confession. If you're committing mortal sin, get to confession regularly to break it.
During the same lecture, Father Ripperger also shares a few useful things for spiritual protection. Now, before that, I'd just like to say that even though what Father Ripperger is sharing here are meant for Catholics, but I hope for those of you who are non-Catholics and are listening to this will keep an open mind to what is being shared here. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments below, and I'm sure a lot of our Catholic brothers and sisters here will be more than happy to help.
So, the sacraments are very important. Leading a normal Catholic sacramental life, educating yourself, can be one of the greatest protections. If you teach yourself the doctrines of the church, you're less likely to fall into error and therefore become subject to the demons. So getting to Mass regularly, daily Mass is very important. The sacramentals are extremely important. Now there's different kinds of sacramentals, obviously. There's the various, you can get the St. Benedict medal, which you want blessed in the old rite. Not that the new rite is bad, but that the old rite has 2 exorcisms over the medal itself, so that's one of the reasons you want to do that. The Benedict medal, the miraculous medal, is sometimes has a great impact in providing protection and help. There's the scapular, which is very important for spiritual warfare. The Padre Pio said that the rosary is one of the greatest weapons in spiritual warfare, so which is very true. People who say the rosary daily are less likely to get taken to the woodshed by them. They're less likely to. There's other sacramentals like holy water. Now, the New Rite holy water is a very simple blessing. It does render it holy. The problem is it's not as efficacious as the old one. And priests, with the clarification and the Summorum Pontificum of Benedict XVI, has made it clear that the old Rite books were never suppressed. So every priest can use the old Rite in relationship to these. And in the old Rite of blessing of holy water, you exercise the salt, you exercise the water, then you put the two together, and then there's a blessing given to them. So it's doubly exercised. If you can get a hold of Epiphany water made in the old Rite, it's triple exercised. Lustrial water, which is the water that they begin to make at, but it doesn't become baptismal water. It's the water they do during the Easter Vigil, is also very effective. There's different kinds of waters blessed in honor of different kinds of saints that can be also effective. But water is very helpful, and one of the ways you can protect yourself is by blessing your house on a somewhat frequent basis, once a week or so, especially if you have teenagers, maybe a little bit more often. No, I'm just kidding. But you want to bless the house regularly and have the priest come and bless your house once a year as just a general rule, because the blessed house will actually help you. In fact, exorcists are very often encouraging people to take 4 Benedict medals after the house is blessed and place the Benedict medals in the 4 corners of the property to kind of set up a little box which the demons are less likely to come in to near your house. So holy water is really important. Sometimes I'll do what I call waterboarding, which is if the demon gets a little lippy or won't comply, I'll keep making him drink holy water until he does what he's supposed to do, right? And they some of them are brutally sensitive to it. They can hardly take it. The next is exorcised oil. It's olive oil that's exorcised. You can use it in your cooking. You don't want to fry your bacon in it, obviously, but you can use it in salads and things of that sort. There's exorcised salt, which is made in the initial stage for making the holy water. You can use in cooking so that it actually provides you a certain degree of protection. I was one time at an institution, and just to see what I was dealing with spiritually, I exorcised the salt. The nuns used it. The next day, 3 people who I thought probably had influence got deathly sick. So it does have an effect. Whether it was an exact correspondence, we're not really sure, but there probably was. So the exorcised oil can be very helpful. You can take the exorcised oil and put it on the foreheads of your children when you bless them. In fact, blessing your children is one of the principal ways to protect your children. And it's just something as simple. If you're the parents, you just say, may God bless you, and you just put you make the sign of the cross on their forehead, or you use the exorcised oil for that purpose.
For the following clip, I think it's a very good reminder for all parents out there, and so I hope this will be very helpful to you. Cursing our children, I think, and this is only my personal opinion, and that this is a problem that will be the norm among young parents who are exposed to the kind of movies and the shows on television they're exposed to growing up.
Cursing your children is one of the principal ways, or one of the easiest ways, to open your children up to diabolic influence. I know a man who became possessed by a very stout demon because his father cursed him. And that just means that the blessing is actually to provide protection for you. That's part of it. It's also to give you grace and things of that sort. This is one of the reasons why you don't curse anybody or anything. In fact, what most people don't realize is every time you use vulgarities or profanities, you open up the air to diabolic influence. It's right in Scripture. They're called demons of the air. There's a ritual from Milan where you can actually say a prayer to stop storms and tempests. I knew a guy who actually said that ritual when a tornado, or when a really bad, I think it was a tornado, in fact, was coming, and he said that ritual, and as soon as he finished the last line, the thing retracted. Now that doesn't mean every tornado is caused by a demon, but it does mean they can influence the air. This is one of the reasons I tell people, knock it off, right? Even venial sin can have an impact. So those are, the other thing is too, is sometimes you can get other things like relics, things of that sort can be very helpful for protection.
In our previous video, we've listened to Father Ripperger talking about generational sins, and so I thought it will be interesting to hear another exorcist talking about it. Monsignor Stephen Rossetti. Actually, in this clip, he was responding to the following questions. How does dabbling in the occult affect ourselves and future generations? And does fighting against it also impact future generations?
It's a complex question. The church has never definitively talked about generational sin. So, what I'm going to share with you is our experience, our theological reflection, but it's not de fide. So, we are only culpable for our own sins. So, the sins of my grandparents or whatever, I'm not responsible for those sins. But can I be affected by them? Sure, I can. That starts with Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve sinned, and we're been affected by it. So yeah, and baptism, while wiping away the effects of original sin, does not wipe away all the sequelae, all the symptoms, if you will. So we've seen there are in fact generational effects of sin. And I know that's hard for people to accept. They say it's not fair. As I said before, as your mother's told you growing up, life is not fair. But God does allow it. And so, which is why in every one of our online deliverance sessions, we will lift any generational curses and generational sins and that sort of thing. And does it affect generations after? Sure, it does. And we've seen some, just last night we did a session on this, and there were some real powerful effects. So our experience has been that there are generational effects and that these prayers do help.
And I'm quite aware that there are a few Freemasons who commented quite frequently on the videos here. And even though I've shared a couple of times before about what these exorcists think of the Freemasons, some are still unconvinced. But please allow me to share this again from Monsignor Rossetti, and please listen carefully to what he is saying here.
Our response to Freemasonry might seem extreme. You say, what's wrong with Freemasonry? They're a bunch of guys that hang around and do a social organization. It seems harmless. Well, the church has roundly condemned Freemasonry, and as late as the 1980s. And actually, they said very, very seriously, if you belong to these organizations, you are cut off from the sacraments, which is a very powerful statement. And the statement from the Vatican also said that the local bishops can't overturn that. That this is from the Holy See itself. The question is why? Well, when you go into the specifics of it and the real spirituality behind it, you begin to realize it's an occult organization, whether you intend it or not. And so, especially as you move up in the ranks, it becomes more and more, a problem. So, and our experience has been that yes, the church's teachings is true because we see the effects of Freemasonry in families. So we have every one of our deliverance sessions, we have the people pray the prayer to lift the curses of Freemasonry. And then we ratify that as church. And you can see the effects of this down through families. You see these strange continuing patterns of diseases and conflicts and those sorts. You see that down through the generations, this same pattern of different kinds of diseases and conflicts and suicides, murders, homicides, strange diseases. So, and when you pray the prayers, oftentimes it lifts.
Well, that is all for the video this time. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video, and I hope you've learned a lot from this. If there's any suggestion or feedback, please don't hesitate to let me know in the comments below. Anyway, my apology for not uploading new video every day like I used to before. Some of the materials I've had to listen to a number of times before I decide to share them with you. And for those of you who'd like to support our works, I left a link to our PayPal donation in the description box below and from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much for your continuous support, contribution, and prayer. It is only because of all of you that I am able to do this on a full-time basis. And until the next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and God bless you.
Imagine, watching the tape of an old game that your team won. You know who wins. You know you're going to win. I mean, you might get a little on edge even so, but you know who wins the match. Same thing in this the Christian journey. We know who wins. Jesus won. The death and resurrection of Jesus broke Satan's back, and God wins. So relax. The game's over. Yeah. The only thing that's left in play is for us, will you accept the salvation in Christ or not? That's all that's left.